And when we talk about the political power, what are your thoughts on how Republicans can actually come together and figure out a way to put pressure on these tech companies? How do we put pressure on our elected officials? Because it seems like, Ted Cruz was fighting for this. We kind of saw this coming, and yet we are still in this situation. And so if we don't have Congress, if we don't have, hopefully we take back the Senate, and hopefully we also take back the presidency. But what can we do in the meantime until we actually stop these companies from continuing to be monopolies, because they are monopolies?
Well, the thing we have to remember, I sound like a conservative optimist here. A conservative pessimist says things can't get any worse, and a conservative optimist says, yes, they can. And so I sound like a conservative optimist because it's not even just the question of controlling our speech. It's a whole problem of surveillance capitalism. These companies have more political power than basically any entity in the history of the world. They not only control our speech, but they spy on all of our behavior, and they actually impel some of our behavior through subtle conditioning cues because they're involved in every aspect of our lives, from our phones to our computer to the cameras that are now ubiquitous to, in some cases, our microwaves and our refrigerators. They're just everywhere. And so that the imbalance of power there is so great. And it's not as though these are purely private entities. I mean, there are multiple institutions within Google and within the other big tech platforms that were funded and even founded by various groups associated with the federal government. So the line between public and private here, I think, is a lot blurrier than we once thought it was. The three traditionally understood ways to go at these guys are Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. So you remove their legal protections, which were given to them in the 1990s, and obviously we're now in a completely different world technologically. You can go after them on antitrust, as you suggested, and you can go after them on fraud. They attained a critical mass in the square by telling people that they could speak to the people they wanted to speak to and follow the people they wanted to follow. And then that was a lie. That was a fraud that was perpetrated on them. So I think you should go after it on all of those fronts. You'd have to rely on the DOJ in this case, which is not going to happen under the Biden administration. You could try to bring suit from other places, but I think the more effective method is going to be to win elective office, to infiltrate and manipulate the bureaucracy, and to bring these companies to heel.
And I want to go back to something you alluded to a little earlier, which is that you argue that this whole debate is not really about free speech, but about what kind of society we want to live in. Where the left wants to restrict certain speech, we might want to restrict other things, pornography, maybe something else. So the question is really, whose country do we want to live in? But it seems to me like conservatives have sort of gotten, or at least some conservatives have gotten used to kind of maybe being the underdog, or being we're kind of the ones who are, at least right now, we're maybe the minority party. And so we then say, oh, let's go for free speech then, because if we do censorship arguments, we can't be the ones doing it to them.